Good morning. This is great. Wow. Looking around this room, I see people at every single table here who have been partners and are being honest about this most urgent challenge that we face, the housing crisis here on Cape Cod that we've had for decades, gosh, since I was in high school, probably middle school, but really in the pandemic, right, that problem has just been so exacerbated, right? And we're quite literally at a point of inflection where, particularly in the extremities of the region, on the islands, in the outer Cape where I live, but increasingly across the region, we're grappling with how we figure out how are we going to provide, how are we going to sustain a year-round community, how are we going to provide housing for most all year-round people who don't yet own a home or going to inherit a home, and it is a very monumental task. I am so heartened by Housing Protect Cape Cod's coalition. Thank you to HAC, thank you to the Chamber, thank you to the Realtors, thank you to the home builders, thank you to Cape Hill for working with us to take the seeds of an idea and to see it really come to germination. And I think we're really making some real progress here. Want to recognize, of course, my colleague Representative Kip Diggs, who's in the room. Kip has been a tremendous partner, particularly on development, particularly on housing issues. I know Representative Chris Flanagan was here earlier. I would be remiss talking about any substantive policy issue without thanking now former State Representative Sarah Peak, who we have the good fortune to have her now working in the governor's office in a very senior role. I just want to thank everyone for making this happen. Also greetings from my sister, who is not here because she just had a baby last week. Baby Simone, 10 pounds, 3 ounces. She is the competence here, much more hardy than her brother. But what I want to do is just walk you through what we've sort of done, where we are. You've heard a lot about the Affordable Homes Act. I want to put some granularity in this, and then I want to talk about where we're going next. So as all of y'all know, all of you heard, Governor Healy signed the law, the Affordable Homes Act. How did we get here in securing a seasonal communities designation? Well, that started with all of you. The legislative delegation spent a significant amount of time listening to municipal officials, to housing advocates, to business owners, asking our towns, what are the tools that you wish that you have, that you don't have, that you can't deploy? What are those, and how can we secure them? And so we worked doggedly in partnership with the Healy Driscoll administration to come up with first the concept that communities like ours that have the seasonal population flux, right? We probably couldn't say in law, oh, it's just a Cape and Island special thing, right? So hence the sort of idea that communities that have the seasonal population flux, changes in our employment. We face a whole series of unique challenges as it relates to housing, right? Our housing market is largely driven by not the people who live here year-round, but by second, third, fourth homeowners, investment properties, and the like. And so we work with the administration, we work with municipal officials, we work with housing advocates, we work with the business community to come up with this toolkit that the governor proposed, the House sustained. We fleshed it out sort of fully in the Senate and preserved the Senate language in the final negotiation, which was no easy feat. You've heard also statewide, the Affordable Homes Act as well contains a whole host of tools that are really helpful on the housing front: accessory dwelling units by right, facilitating the conversion of vacant commercial space to housing, supporting green housing initiatives. But let's really talk about seasonal communities and what is now law and what is now coming into effect. So for the towns that receive the designation, some towns are going to automatically receive the designation. If you have 35% or greater of the housing units in your community, which are second homes, you're already going to receive. By designation, we mean toolkit, right? You're already going to have this toolkit that you can deploy. So that is all the towns in Martha's Vineyard, all 6 towns in the island. Shout out to my island friends who are here, who were just as key stakeholders in moving this forward, Nantucket, and then essentially most all of the outer and lower Cape, part of the Mid-Cape, Provincetown, Truro, Wellesley, Eastham, Orleans, Chatham, Harwich, Denison, Brewster. We think that y'all are automatically in. HLC is going to put out final guidance science to affirm that, but you're above 35%. We also work in the seasonal communities designation to make sure that we look at communities who are facing similar issues as we are, who might not be maybe in other parts of the state. Think of the southern Berkshires, right? Places like Lenox, Massachusetts, perhaps some of these other coastal communities. So they also have the ability to receive the designation. The remaining towns in Barnstable County that are not explicitly put into law will have an eligibility criteria to come in. We believe that most all towns on Cape Cod are going to be able to access this toolkit. So what does this do? First, seasonal communities may establish a year-round housing trust fund without going through the cumbersome and lengthy home rule process that is often required to create these special trusts. So a year-round housing trust fund is essentially going to allow the community to deploy resources, dollars, to create and to preserve year-round housing for people who make above area median income. All the tools that we have currently at our disposal to subsidize housing are for people who make below area median income. These tax credits, these programs often work best when you're talking about 30% AMI, 60% AMI. We need to keep that up, right? We have scores of folks in our community who qualify for and urgently need capitally affordable housing, but we also have to figure out, right, how do you subsidize housing for people who make above area median income? Our teachers, our firefighters, our sewer workers, your state senators, right? All these people, right, who are, basically if you're under a certain age, you don't own a home on Cape Cod, right? I'm in this boat, I rent, I don't own, right? You're probably not gonna be able to afford a house, right? This is just the reality where we are. So how do you provide subsidy? How do you provide ways to both create and preserve housing? The Year-Round Housing Trust is key to doing this. This is the fiscal vehicle to enable it. Nantucket's done this, Provincetown's done this, and then Chatham, the 6 Island Towns, and Martha's Vineyard have filed home rule petitions to ask us to do this. So instead of doing sort of whack-a-mole, waiting for the legislature to move these trusts through, having a consistency across the trusts, there'll be a uniform ability for towns to adopt a year-round housing trust. Then seasonal communities are also allowed to acquire year-round housing occupancy deed restrictions. This was something the town of Provincetown came to us with and said, hey, look, we want the ability to preserve both rental units and ownership units as year-round. Again, I filed a home rule petition. This is also something, if you look at the models around how we sort of solve this, right? Where are we looking? Who are you learning from? Where are you looking to? We're looking to places like Aspen and Vail, Colorado, the Colorado ski towns, or Northern California around Lake Tahoe, who frankly have had many of these tools in place, again, when I was in high school, so 20 years ago. And so that's what, they have used a deed restriction, a year-round deed restriction, for quite a lot of success. About a third of the homes in the Colorado ski towns have a year-round, some sort of year-round deed restriction on a third of that inventory. They're sort of our model, that's where we're probably having to get to. But again, it's a very costly problem. We'll talk about that in a minute. You need the fiscal mechanism, the trust to get it done. You need the ability to have those year-round deed restrictions. Providing housing to public employees is another policy tool that our towns have asked us for. Edgartown has been in a dire situation to keep their water and sewer department fully operational because they can't find housing for their sewer workers. Currently, under existing law, towns can provide housing for seasonal workers, but if you're a year-round municipal employee, you can't do it. The Affordable Homes Act, under a seasonal community designation, you can do that. We also include similar language for artists and our creative economy as well. We understand that we're going to need to provide some sort of ability to also focus on that population. We're keenly looking at revenue and how do we generate revenue to solve this issue and to not just put this on the backs of our property taxpayers, right? So another thing that the seasonal communities designation allows, if you have the designation, communities can raise their residential property tax exemption. Currently, the ceiling for that exemption is 35%. If you have the designation, you can go up to 50%, right? So this is just another tool to reduce cost for year-round residents, year-round taxpayers, and then apply that to the rest of the tax base. If the town chooses, it's the decision up to the town. There's a handful of things we're asking towns to do in the seasonal communities designation that again are borrowed from our municipalities. We're asking towns to adopt bylaws or ordinances variances to allow for tiny home construction. This is something, there's actually been some barriers at the state level, particularly with the state building code, the sanitary code as well. There's going to be guidance coming out from HLC on that. And then also allowing construction on undersized lots or merger lots, which is another piece that's in the Affordable Homes Act. These are ideas we borrow directly from Oak Bluffs, from Truro, from towns that have moved these forward. And then, a crucial component of this is that, I'm very clear that this is just a start, right? That we did a whole lot in the Affordable Homes Act by even establishing the premise that our communities have a unique set of needs that are different from other parts of the Commonwealth. Is a very significant kind of policy concept. Folks may be very familiar of the Gateway City designation. You aren't a Gateway City here in Hyannis in Barnstable. And I see Barnstable Town Councilors nodding, right? A Gateway City designation opens up a whole series of tools for those communities. Seasonal communities is essentially sort of a similar framework, a similar concept. But we know that our work is very much, we're in the midst of that work. So the Affordable Homes Act also creates a Seasonal Communities Advisory Council. And this is to provide essentially advice and recommendations, yes, in implementing what's currently in law, and then figuring out all the other pieces and things that we're going to need to do to truly tackle and to make real headway on this housing crisis. So this is quite significant, and I think this council, I really hope, becomes a forum for us to really take the next step in what we know to do, yes, for housing, and then other issues that may come up, right? I can see a Seasonal Communities Association having consideration for education funding, which we often get left out on, or the unique needs that seasonal communities may have related to wastewater. This was a tremendous amount of collaboration and work, and we would have never gotten this into law without the folks in this room, right? Who came up to Beacon Hill and made the case to my colleagues. Look, I represent a district. Most all my colleagues know and have visited Cape Cod, have visited Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. They have a perception of what this place is, arguably in those sort of busiest summer months, right? When we are chock full. We've got a lot of wealth that's here in those busy months. And all of you helped us to make the case that Cape Codders, and really show how Cape Codders and Islanders are really struggling to afford a life here, are really struggling to make life here, and particularly that's related to housing. So all of you deserve a huge round of applause for making that happen. I also want to thank Meg Rivera is here from my team, who's my legislative director, Michael Holcomb, my district director, who's here. I really want to thank my team for really digging in on what was a very complicated policy to draft, and the statute to execute, and now working on implementation. So what is next, right? We are looking forward to HLC releasing initial guidelines on a number of these provisions. My understanding is this is going to be in early winter, hoping for sort of a December timeframe. I really asked them to prioritize, especially the creation of regulations to enable the year-round housing trust. You cannot execute programs, initiatives for attainable housing, for housing that provides subsidy for year-round housing in some way without a year-round housing trust. You can't execute a lease to locals program. You can't execute year-round deed restrictions, right? That trust is key. The towns who are furthest ahead in the region, Nantucket and Provincetown, among them have those trusts, right? And so we want to make sure, especially for towns like Chatham, and the island, Martha's Vineyard, who've been waiting for this mechanism for some time, can have that. And then we're going to, likely HLC is going to put out guidance as well around a number of these model bylaws that can be executed, and then working with that Seasonal Advisories Council to really flesh out those details. I'm also really hoping through that process, we're going to come up with a list of like 20 other things that we weren't able to get to in seasonal communities that we can work to go further on. And many of those hopefully can be done, some administratively through regulations. Hopefully some of those will come to us that we can, write into the Seasonal Communities 2.0 bill that we then work and pass into law. What I'm so encouraged by is if you look at if you listen to Governor Healy, if you listen to Governor Driscoll, they're not viewing the Affordable Homes Act as sort of one and done. We all really understand, given the housing crisis we have in Massachusetts, given the need we have to, we essentially need to build 200,000 housing units by the end of the decade across the state. This is a very hefty task. It's something that government cannot and nor should do alone. We're going to need zoning reform. We're going to need development at the table. We're going to need to be really looking at how do we preserve year-round housing, right? We just can't build our way out of this problem on Cape Cod Islands. We also are going to need a revenue source, right? And this is where the transfer fee is absolutely key. If you look at the ski towns, right, where we've gone to look and see their progress, they have funded their year-round deed restrictions, their lease to local programs. They have funded these programs through the transfer fee and luxury real estate transactions. It has worked remarkably well. 12 of the 19 towns in the Cape Islands district have taken votes at town meeting that support the transfer fee. I'm asking each and every you, if you're in the remaining towns that have not passed this, we need you to take up a home rule petition or a resolution supporting a transfer fee to get this done. If we don't, without this vehicle, without this revenue source, there's no way we're going to be able to come up with and pay for what is a tens of millions of dollars of problem. And I'll be honest, what my counterparts in Beacon Hill say is, oh, Julian, the property tax rate in your communities ranges from $3 to $11,000, sorry, $3 to $11 per thousand in the towns in the Cape Islands district. Most towns in the state are at $20,000, $30,000. Just raise your property taxes, right? That's what my colleagues in Ways and Means, that's what my colleagues said as we're making the case for this, right? We, of course, all understand that we have so many people living in our community, with a third of all our residents here on Cape Cod who are over the age of 65, right? Who are, we've got a lot of people who may now be a little land rich, right, because of the value of their homes, but are cash poor, and that we can't just fund this problem off our property tax base. So, right, by not advancing a transfer fee, by not advancing these proposals, we're not going to have a revenue source to take on this issue, and the state is essentially, going to force us to look at our options. So please, 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 we need all of you to advance transfer fee as we make the case for this. This is where the revenue source comes from. It makes all the sense in the world. I'm also hoping that we just continue to come up with the ideas, the solutions. I really want to hear from each and every one of you about barriers that you're facing in your communities, about the challenges that we face in advancing what can be tough votes at town meeting. We're all in this together, and if we don't take this seriously in our towns, I don't know how we're going to be able to sustain a year-round community here. And I can say that as someone who represents, Nantucket. I know earlier today from Secretary Augustus, about the DPW workers on Nantucket, right? 2 employees of the town were homeless this summer. We heard from them, right? It's a heart-wrenching. I can think of 24 friends in Provincetown who've left because they can't find housing. They've given up, right? We're losing about 1,000 families a year on Cape Cod because they can't afford housing. What kind of community, what kind of society are we where an entire generation is essentially foreclosed the opportunity to build wealth, foreclose the opportunity of homeownership, because we can't get creative, we can't create and preserve the year-round housing that we need. So that's really the vision, that's really the goal. I am incredibly not only grateful, but really awestruck by the amount of time and attention and effort that the people in this room and folks outside of here have put into this issue. I don't talk to a leader in the region, I don't talk to a serious leader in the region at all on any issue that doesn't bring up housing as the #1 issue, right? Whether you're an employer, whether you're in our healthcare sector or human services sector, whether you're trying to figure out how you make a town run, keep a restaurant open. The biggest challenge is finding workforce, and that challenge is directly tied to housing. And so, look, this is a very steep problem. We've got a lot of work to do. I think we should cheer and celebrate how far we have come, and I think we should steel ourselves, and I'd encourage all of us to steel ourselves for the work that lies ahead. So thank you so much for the opportunity to address you today. And this is our first conference. We've been doing so many good things tonight, and I'm just going to see what we get done next. So thank you so much.
This is the time, and we're going to go quick here because I know everybody's starving, and we're looking forward to getting back to That's why I'm gonna talk really fast. But, this is where we're giving out our 2024 Housing Champion Awards. And I wanna start with Julian, our senator, because of in fact, he was the one that really advocated and helped me get the funding to start Housing to Protect Cape Cod. He believed in the vision and bought into the concept and funded this and what all the work that we're doing, and then the Affordable Homes Act. I mean, like, he really was the one that went door to door in the State House to make sure that seasonal communities was in there, that the expansion of Commonwealth Builder was in there. The things that we've talked about for a long, long time would not have happened without this man. And I just wanted to make sure that we all hear him. He took a lot of political risks here and personal risks here, and we love you. Thank you.